This is where the journey for a Stonewell cider begins, in orchards like this one at the apple farm in Cahir, County Tipperary. In the autumn, we take the apples, we press them, we ferment fresh juice, and then we blend dry ciders to make our products. But before that, there's an awful lot of hard work involved. These trees take years to cultivate, and every year lots of care and good husbandry to make sure that when we get the fruit, it's got all the characteristics that enable us to make the finest ciders that we can. There's one essential ingredient to achieve that, and that's a good farmer. So let's go and meet Contrast, who owns and runs the apple farm. How many acres do you have under apple at the moment?
We've nearly 40 acres, Daniel, altogether of apples grown there.
And how many tons of apples would that create in a year?
Oh, if everything's going well, maybe 600, 700 tons.
And speaking of young orchards, how long does it take from planting of an apple tree to when you can actually make a harvest?
Well, when we plant the trees, usually we plant 2-year-old trees, and there would be a few apples then in the second subsequent year. So you're talking about 4 years.
And how many people have you got working for you? And
yeah, so really, I suppose all year round we have about 10 staff on the farm doing the apples, and then we've got a few more staff doing other bits of jobs and so on. But at this time of year picking, we would have maybe 20 people, and then it drops down to pruning. There'll be 7 or 8 people through the winter pruning the trees and so on, and then there's people packing apples and things like that as well during the winter time also. But on average we have about 12 staff looking after the apples, just, and a few others doing strawberries and things like that.
so your harvesting season starts when?
We begin in August with a variety called Discovery. Depending on the year, it might be around the middle of August. And then we pick Katie and Delbert Estival, then Tipperary Pippin, Cox's Orange Pippin, Elstars, John O'Go's, that kind of sequence, if you know what I mean. So it kind of runs through a number of apples in sequence.
And so you'd wrap up the harvesting at about what time?
Probably, hopefully, this year it'll be a bit late. It was a bit cold this summer, but normally around the 1st to 2nd week in November.
First to second week.
It takes quite a while from start to finish.
And are they all hand-picked?
Everything's hand-picked. The ones on the ground are picked up from the ground, but we don't use those for selling to people who are making juice or anything like that. They just end up being used either for cider vinegar, or usually that would be the end point for those. But all the other, obviously, other trees, apples on the trees are all hand-picked.
And why do you hand-pick as opposed to mechanically harvest them?
Well, if you mechanically harvest, you've got to get them onto the ground first, so you've got to shake the trees. Then the apples land on the ground, they're going to get dirty first of all. Then you've got a machine that's going to be pulling them across the ground and up off the ground, and that's fairly rough on the apples, so you'll get little bruises and marks and so on. So it certainly wouldn't be feasible to use those apples for a good quality juice, or absolutely impossible to sell them afterwards.
So they come out absolutely pristine.
Yeah, well, it's the same as if you had them in your garden and went out and picked one and brought it into the kitchen. You know what I mean? They're being handled very carefully all the way through.
How long can you expect a tree to give you a good yield?
Yeah, we would have some trees here which would be nearly 40 years old and still cropping very productively.